Welcome to the ISO Show, dispelling myths and sharing tips for success to improve your business with ISO standards, with your host, Mel Blackmore.
Hi, and welcome to the ISO Show. In this episode on managing mental health during a pandemic, and as part of our focus on resilience over the next few podcasts, I'm delighted that we've been joined by Claire Forshaw, who's the Occupational Health and Hygiene Partner from Park Health and Safety. Hi, Claire.
Hi, good morning.
Yeah, thanks very much for joining us. I know at the moment, many individuals are suffering from mental health issues due to the stressful situation that we all face and the uncertainty and anxiety that's going on at the moment. I know that obviously that on the light side of this, there have been some great opportunities that have come out of this terrible situation, like the reduction in carbon emissions and things like that. But at the end of the day, employers and employees are faced with this time of uncertainty. So thanks very much for joining us. And I know that we have tried to record this previously, but we did have some, because we're obviously recording this remotely due to the pandemic, we did have some sound quality issues. I do apologise if we get those again today and for our listeners, but hopefully this recording will go successfully.
Let's hope this time.
Yeah. So great. So let's begin with just, how you're getting on at Park Health and Safety. I mean, how's the business for you generally?
Well, I think like most businesses, we've had to adapt pretty quickly to the circumstances. We've had some of our staff have to be put on furlough, which again is probably very similar across many other organisations and businesses. And we've also had to adapt to working at home and delivering our services in quite a different way. Myself personally, I'm quite used to working at home, although maybe not under the circumstances of having a husband here and two grown-up children hanging around the house as well. So we're all learning to work and delivering in quite a new and probably more challenging environment. So in some ways, we're no different to any other business in having to adapt very quickly and deliver in different ways, but learning as we go and adapting as we go.
Yeah. And how are you finding that your clients are being affected by COVID-19 at the moment?
Well, again, it's been a really steep learning curve for everybody. A lot of our customers kind of closed down at the start of the lockdown, like most businesses did. But because we work with a lot of construction projects and construction companies, quite a few actually continued to work right through the lockdown period. So we've had different needs from different customers in terms of support. And obviously because as an organisation, as a professional services company, we're very steeped in the health side of health and safety and using health to benefit safety interventions and to take the whole of health and safety to a kind of new level, thinking about individuals and thinking more proactively about health and safety and anticipating needs. So we've really been able to apply those skills and that experience to look at a lot of the issues that our organisations have faced in terms of continuing to work, but also kind of shutting down and then reopening and returning to a very different world of work. So we've had quite a lot to deliver and quite different to what we've done before, but applying those same fundamental risk management principles to help our customers continue to support their own workforce through this and support the business leaders really to understand what can be done and what needs to be done to keep everybody happy and healthy and at work wherever possible.
And could you provide an example of how you've been working with a client to do that then, please, Claire?
Well, I think, fundamentally work is good for us. It gives us structure in our lives. I think that's where a lot of the kind of concerns and worries generally across society at the minute around our mental health and our mental resilience to cope with these circumstances has been, talked about so much. And I think as that example, work is good for us, but it has to be good work. So people have to come back to work or be in work and feel reassured that, particularly at the moment with this virus that we're all very concerned about and worried about, that those concerns are being listened to and those anxieties are being managed. So thinking about how we help people, I think fundamentally that kind of mental health and well-being aspect of managing risks and managing workplaces has really come to the fore. So the examples are that there's been a lot more proactive communications put out based in evidence and based in the knowledge, which is changing week on week. I mean, every week we're adapting our kind of positions on particular issues, for example, personal protective equipment, due to recent government guidance on that. So we're constantly adapting, but what we're finding is using the opportunity to listen to the government advice, to listen to the World Health Organization advice, to listen to Public Health England, and then to speak to the workforce through our customers and say, well, this is what's happening, this is what we know, and this is what we're doing. So it's given us a real opportunity to engage much more closely with the people we're out there trying to protect.
So in addition to listening to government guidance and trying to operate in alignment with those guidelines and clearly communicating with the employees, what other advice would you give to employers right now to, I guess, guide them in terms of handling the mental health issues that their employees could be facing?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've worked in the kind of sphere of health, and that includes mental health, psychological health issues for many years now. And more recently, I think there's been increased awareness, particularly on the fact that employers have a duty to manage risks created by work, which includes the psychological risks. So there is a fundamental legal imperative to manage the psychological health of our workforce. Now, obviously, those risks, both the physical risks and the psychological risks to our people, have changed drastically over the past couple of months. And this kind of top of mind, front of mind issues now around the risks from a viral infection, very much like the health risks I've been dealing with for many years, which are invisible. Those risks that we don't see, that aren't intuitively visible when we walk into a workplace. So we're dealing with the invisible, which is, what I've had to deal with for many years on the health side of things. But these kind of new and emerging psychological risks, things like people feeling isolated, where they're having to work from home a lot more, and maybe have never done that before, that kind of support network around those workers. People are frightened. They're frightened of their health and the health of their loved ones. They're frightened of their future in work and whether they'll still have a job. Probably there's been either an increase or a reduction in demands from the workplace, both of which stress people out. You can be stressed from having too much to do, and you can also feel very stressed from not being stimulated enough. And again, a drastic change in expectations, what we expect our workforce to do in the circumstances under which we expect them to deliver. And these are all work issues. These are not just the issues that we face as a society from this viral threat that we have. These are about managing workplace issues. So we're very much trying to guide our employers to look at what they can control and influence around providing support for those who feel isolated, providing reassurances, looking at those work demands and reflecting on how better they can be managed, and looking at what they maybe are expecting from their workforce and how they can present that. So we're really looking at the, out with the general stresses and anxiety caused by the situation we're in, but actually within a workplace, what can we manage and what can we influence and what control do we have over those things that we should, in legal duty and in moral duty, be putting as much effort in to help get us all through these very strange circumstances that we find ourselves in.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned about, the increase in stress levels and workload. I know some people, that have been furloughed, for example, might not necessarily have the stress of additional workload, but they've got other types of stresses as well, haven't they? But I think one of the things that I know that we've discussed in a previous conversation that we had offline was about the potential pressures for when people do start to go back to work, when we go back to work in the new kind of normal, which some industries are already doing, like construction and manufacturing. So what sort of pressures do you think, employers and employees are going to be facing then?
Yes, well, we're helping a lot of our customers at the moment in that return to work phase. So bringing people potentially back, planning planning for a return to work, planning for what it might look like if and when people do start to return to an office or a workplace environment. And it's very kind of baby steps, slow and steady. It's quite interesting looking at the kind of education sector at the minute and the kind of difficulties they're having in a very short time period in preparing to return to the classroom, with much more children coming back into the classroom. And it's a really daunting task for them to prepare for that. But a lot of the customers we're working with are looking months in advance at what options they have for returning people to work, what the fears and anxieties might be. And what we're doing is we're doing it from a health perspective. So we're looking at the health of our workforce initially to say, well, what is the health status of people in terms of, are they vulnerable or extremely vulnerable to risks from this virus, and should they be shielding and working from home for as long as possible, but also asking questions about their psychological health, about how they're coping with working from home, whether it's helping them to thrive, helping them to personally manage the balance between work and home, as it's so different at the moment, or are there people out there that are actually really struggling with that balance and would really take benefit from coming back to a workplace. And that includes keeping in contact with furloughed workers and, letting them know what's been put in place for any return to work as and when it happens, and keeping people informed and engaged of what's being done. Because a lot of the return to work, a lot of the management around returning to a workplace will be about reducing fears and anxieties. And sometimes a lot of the interventions that we're looking at may not be purely kind of scientifically beneficial, but they provide a huge sense of reassurance to people that a lot is being done to protect their health and to allay their concerns. And at the moment, I think that's really important, that people know that their employer is doing as much as they can to prepare people and to prepare the workplace with all the robust measures that they can to reassure people that it will be as safe as can be to get back to work.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think reassurance at this stage in the game is definitely key, isn't it? So you've shared with us some great hints and tips and guidance and support, both for employers and employees, I think, today, Claire, which has been fantastic. But are there any final hints on tips that you'd like to leave our ISO show listeners with today?
Yes, I suppose for employers and leaders within the kind of business world, it's about looking to the future. So there's a lot of kind of current and imminent issues that we're dealing with, that kind of return to work, managing the workplace, managing people's expectations at the moment while we're still under kind of lockdown measures. But I really think businesses need to look to the kind of mid to long term future, because a lot of our anxieties and fears at the moment are around our immediate health, but also what will the business look like in 6 months? What will we be expected to do? What will our role be in 6 months' time? Will it have changed? And my kind of fear and concerns, I suppose, generally around the mental health of our workforce is that possibly in 6 months' time, based on the news that we're already hearing about this deep recession that we're going to move into, that businesses are going to have to maybe expect more, deliver more, catch up for that kind of downturn period that we're in at the moment. But I think business leaders need to be realistic and need to reflect on their previous business delivery model and their previous targets that they had and say these are now irrelevant in the face of where we've been and where we have to go. And I really hope businesses look to the future in terms of, we need to all accept that what we had in plan is not going to be delivered. It's not going to be realistic. And those kind of shareholder, SLT expectations, client expectations need to be managed proactively. So we need to start saying, look, we won't be able to deliver as we did before. We've got to adapt to a new world. We've got to get used to this new normal, and that's going to knock our productivity. And we're going to proactively look at the mental health and resilience of our workforce to say that's not going to be possible in this new world. And I think if we start to look realistically and proactively at what we can deliver based on probably a reduced workforce in the workplace, many people still working from home, I guess, for quite some time, and possibly moving in and out of lockdown periods for quite some time yet. So although we do need to bolster the economy and return to productivity, that is going to be a new level of productivity. And if we can plan for that. And again, provide that reassurance to our clients and our customers and our shareholders, as well as to our workers and our employees. I think we'd probably be able to manage to get through it in a much more stable way, providing that kind of resilient workforce for the future to be able to actually deliver in an efficient and effective way with that kind of mental robustness behind them.
Brilliant. Thanks, Claire. I think just to summarise then, some of those key points that you raised was all about being proactive, planning, providing reassurance, and just keep that positive communication going throughout the coming months. And, one of the key words that you mentioned over and over again was being realistic, which we all need to be, don't we, in the current situation, and just be patient, but be prepared for, as you mentioned, potentially working harder than ever before, but all within the realms of physical health and safety, and also mental health and safety as well in the future, as we potentially head into another recession, which is what we're currently being warned about at the moment. So thanks very much, Claire, once again. So if our listeners would like to get in touch with you and find out a little bit more about the work that you do, Claire, at Park Health and Safety, how can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, I mean, if I could just add as a final point, apologies, just one final point to finish on, that there is a lot of worry and concern about where we're going and the worries around the economy. But in terms of workplace management of health risks and mental health risks, I see this as a real opportunity to engage and to work together. So to use that communication, maybe to use this time of reflection that we're in at the moment, and this time of change, to actually ask the workforce and engage them much more closely to be involved in what the new world of work is going to look like. And I think we've seen, we're in Mental Health Week at the moment, and the moral of this week is about kindness. And I think we've seen a lot of kindness, and I think we've seen a lot of care and support demonstrated by employers. And I hope that does continue, because if we do work together and we do talk and listen, we have this opportunity to provide a much improved world of work. So although there's a lot of doom and gloom about and a lot of worry and concern, I think there's the real opportunity to actually use this time to allow a more collaborative approach to changing the world of work for the future. And maybe that's going to allow our mental health to actually stay positive and get us all through the challenges that we face going forward.
Absolutely, yes.
So if anybody wants to get in touch with me, if anybody would like to speak to me about any of the issues I've raised or needs any kind of support or advice, I'm always happy to talk to anybody around this subject. I'm quite a talker, so I'm happy to speak to anybody, or if anybody wants to make contact with me. Probably the best way is to contact me through my email address, which is claire.forshaw, CLAREFORSHAW @parkhs.co.uk.
That's great. Thanks very much once again. And we'll include those contact details on the show notes, which is available on our website on the ISO show. Thanks once again, Claire, and I look forward to catching up with our listeners on the next ISO show.
Looking to use ISO standards to drive better business practice? Contact us at blackmoresuk.com to access further information and book your free 15-minute call.